Well, I guess on that same theme, similar. What would you say are some of your earliest memories? Just
Some
going
of my
back, yeah. What do
some of
you?
my earliest memories.
Yeah, yeah. What do you? Probably in your childhood. But what
Oh,
comes to mind?
well, I remember when I was at my first grade teacher
Yeah.
was Miss Butler. I remember that, and I don't know if I told you, but I've told the others that I was in the first. It was the first grade. We didn't have kindergartens then,
Okay. Yeah.
and so I was in the first grade, and I guess I wasn't paying too much attention. And of course, Miss Butler was teaching us how to read, and of course she asked me to read this, and I didn't even know what page the book. It was one of these small readers, so uh, you read in front of the group. Well, I went in front, and so I said, I don't know, I don't know where we are, and so she was showing me, and I happened to be looking out the window, and it was snowing, and I said to her, Miss Butler, it's snowing outside. she whacked me. She whacked me across the buttons, and I peed my pants. Talk about embarrassment.
Oh
So I remember that.
man. Wow. Wow.
So that was one thing I
Mm.
remember. Away from her. And like in the second grade, I had Miss McKenzie. These were two. They were never married. They were
Uh,
two spinsters. Mackenzie, I remember, and they used to have these cards for you get up with gum,
yeah.
that we had baseball cards and so
Yeah.
on. Well, in those days they had cards with when Japan was in war with China.
Oh.
They were in war with China, and there was one scene, battle scene, where the Japanese were bombing China
Okay.
in those days. And I thought, oh, this card. But I had a crush on Shirley. Shirley
Okay.
Timrick was her name. She lived. She was on the other side. And so one day I got my best card and put it on her desk.
Oh.
And so when class started, well, she picked up the card and took it to the teacher and said, "Teacher, someone put this on my desk." So the teacher says, "Well, whose card is this? And anybody belong to someone?" And some other kid raised his hand. He got the card. So so it made me quite, and
Oh, man.
impressed me so much. I still remember it.
Wow.
That this card was that I was for her intention.
Yeah.
And also that same year that in the we used to have art class, and I drew a picture of a red cardinal,
Hmm.
and I thought it was fantastic. And so my cousin lived across the street, a skiba, and she saw it and she asked me for it, and I gave it to her. So I remember that, and I was so proud of that picture because my mother was a self-made artist anyway,
Oh, okay.
and she learned how
Okay.
artistry, and she had a good sense of uh, color
Yeah.
that would match and so on. And
Yeah.
I remember that a lot of times she would have us at the kitchen table and say, well, draw something. And of course,
Hmm.
one of the favorite drawings I liked as she had done is that she made a lighthouse out of, and was drawing with stones, all built with stone,
Hmm.
with ground stone that you
Wow.
find around.
Yeah.
And I was trying to duplicate what she was doing.
Okay.
And I was going about, and then she said, "Oh, Lee," see, I was going by Lee then.
Yeah.
"I'll help you." And she took a black crayon and started putting marks around where the stones were. And I burst out crying because she was ruining my picture.
Oh.
Then she turned some brown to some brown gray, and kind of fixed it up so the blacks became shadows. And it ended up a beautiful. And of course, I looked at it, and then I
Wow.
remember I finally stopped crying because it was so good picture.
Wow.
But while she was messing it up with the black, I just cried because she was ruining my picture. So that was another thing
Oh man.
yeah. Oh, and the other, I'll give you one even earlier. My kids were, my brothers were in the Franklin school. There was a public school,
Okay.
had only 4 grades in it.
Okay.
And I'll tell you a little picture about that. Just excuse me, just a second. Oh. They want to know if Josie's is open.
Oh.
They got my number.
Yeah.
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 So
You've already told
it's a
them.
517, so
Yeah.
I know it's really. Anyway, I remember my brothers were at the Franklin school. Dal and Ray were at Franklin school. And so I knew they had a recess, so I thought, well, I would bring them some crackers during the recess. And I remember, I thought you had to sneak up,
Yeah.
So there was the school was right alongside of railroad tracks. And of course, they had the right-of-way, and of course, the right-of-way was tall grass.
Yeah.
So I was kind of sneaking in the grass. I didn't want anybody to see me with these crackers, because.
Yeah.
But I remember going on trying to, go get across there. Then I got too scared to go across the tracks, and so I ate the crackers myself. But that used to be in my thoughts. The other thing that when I got to Franklin School, when I was in the 2nd grade, that I only had 4 grades. And I got the impression that after 4 grades, you got to go out and get a job. And I was wondering, how will I ever get a job? Not thinking that, how growing up and that, but I thought after 4 grades, you got to, that's all there was, the 4 grades in the school. So my thoughts were, well, you got to go get a job.
Yeah.
So,
And then did you?
So you talk about, so that ended up because I changed school in the 3rd grade.
Okay.
And I went to a parochial school instead.
Okay.
So it was different.
Did you have older brothers who had to go get a job after that, or?
Well, I don't. That's stuff that's still in my mind that you had to do the.
I see what you're saying.
Yeah, it was. Just something in my own mind.
I see what you're saying.
That you get these thoughts and they were embedded.
Yeah.
It's still indelible. It's indelible. I think that gee, I had to go get a job. And after I got in the 5th grade, well,
That's funny.
It's the whole situation. Your thinking was different.
Yeah.
But those were some early
I see what
thoughts.
you're saying.
Yeah.
What would you and your brothers do together growing up?
Nothing.
What? Sit around the house?
Oh, well, we had our jobs around the house. I had to scrub the hallway to the stairs to go upstairs from the kitchen. My Saturday job was to scrub that, and that was my section of the cleanup on Saturday. So that was, I thought I did a credible job. Of course, it was scrubbing. I mean, it was a wooden floor, so it wasn't, linoleum or that. So it's a little easier. So it was, and kids in our days, we were kind of gruff, we wouldn't think of wiping our feet or that. The parents would, oh yeah, wipe your feet. But otherwise, if it was our own judgment, we just skipped it. So, but I remember the house we had, 1 bedroom downstairs, and then we had 1, 2, 3, 4 bedrooms upstairs. and two of them were unheated.
Hmm.
So, and everybody wanted the front room because it was the two windows to the street. It was the nicest room, but
Hmm.
the oldest, my brother Ray got the front room.
Hmm.
But he also got what they call a pagina, which was a feather tick. You
Oh,
know,
okay.
for the winter, it was
Yeah.
get under that and it'd keep
Huh.
it nice and warm.
Hmm.
And of course, Dad always had to build a fire at night. We had no,
Wow.
you know, the fire in the furnace
Wow.
would burn down. We had coal, but every morning he had to go down and start a fire with some wood and then a few chunks of coal.
Wow.
That was about 5 o'clock in the morning. He'd be down there. You could hear him, you know, banging, taking the ashes out or banging away. something.
Yeah.
So,
Ah.
and then one time, I was home all alone, and gee, it was kind of cold up there, and I went down, and there was no fire, so I said, I'll start a fire. I'll start a fire like Dad did. So we would throw first of all some wood in there, and
Mhm.
then coal on top, a few chunks of coal, and of course I had kind of forgotten, you know, all the things he did. Well, then he used to throw some kerosene on it,
Oh, yeah.
you know, and
Get
then
it started.
put the flame in there. Well, here I am trying to start it, and I threw the kerosene on it, and then I threw a match in there, and then closed the door.
Oh.
Well, it got, you know, kind of explosive, and I was by the door, the you know, metal door, and it banged me right, tossed me right halfway across the room.
Wow.
I was all by myself that day. I don't know where everybody else was, but
Ooh.
that night I just thought it was getting kind of cool upstairs.
Yeah.
And of course, Saturday night we all wanted to take our bath first, so we could get in front of the heater, you know, the vent that came out.
Oh.
And it was a gravity furnace. In other words, there was no fan blowing up. It just went by gravity. Hot air goes
Wow.
up. So,
Wow.
and everybody would run for that one because it was the one right on top of the furnace.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah.
Man. You're up north too. That get pretty cold.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. You know, they never closed the schools.
Yeah. of
I
course.
remember we used to get, you know, in my days they would have, you know, a snowstorm and have 3 foot of snow, and yet the school would be open. You might go there and find that you got
Yes.
you know, half a class or less,
Yeah.
but you were, you know, you had and a lot of times we went right down the middle of the road to
Mm.
get to school. It was about a mile away when I got to high school,
Okay.
but it was only 3 blocks for grade school.
Mm.
About 3 blocks away in grade
Mm.
school. But the bad snowstorms I remember were when I was in high school, and then we'd have to go down, try to go in the tire tracks
Mm.
of cars or something to go down that mile to get to the high school. But we never missed class. And of course, Mom and Dad there were both working.
Mm.
So, you know, when they go to work, and so it was up to us to kind of
Yeah.
close the doors and make sure the doors, we wouldn't lock, and
Mm.
you never locked the doors.
Yeah.
So,
Would you always walk to school?
yeah,
Yeah.
always walked to school.
Mm. Mm.
And then I don't know if I told you the other occasion when I was only, I must have been, let's see, I must have been 10 or 12. And of course, my younger brother he was 8 years younger than I am, so he was only about 3 or 4.
Mm.
But the river was only a block from the house, so in the summer, you know, anytime, summer afternoon, we had time, we'd go swimming
Mm.
in the river. The thing is that, you know, you couldn't go far in the river because it would drop, because it was the main stream of the river.
Okay.
So maybe started out and by inside of 5 feet, then it went down into the channel. And I was in charge of my younger brother. He was at the time he must have been, let's see, I was 8 years between us, so I was 11 or 12, and he was about 3. Well, so that was 13. And I took him down to the river, and we were just, a bunch of us were swimming around there. And of course, you play games, and then I looked up, and geez, there's my brother floating down the river, Apparently he got past the drop off,
Wow.
but he was kind of chubby.
Okay.
He was laying, and actually it wasn't the cleanest river, and I was noticing bubbles. He was blowing bubbles, but floating down, and so I got real scared. Oh my gosh, is he breathing in? But he was all right.
Oh man. Wow.
So that was the scare, of when was he gonna drown or something?
So would you guys swim a lot? Did you grow up swimming?
Yeah,
Okay.
but we had to learn on our own.
Okay.
No, and none of my brothers would teach me that.
Oh.
None of my brothers would.
Okay.
We were kind of independent from one another. Like I even said that I don't think we became friends until I was a sophomore in high school.
Ah.
Then, because otherwise we were always at each other,
Yeah.
getting mad at each other for some
Yeah.
stupid reason.
Yeah.
But my dad, gee, he wouldn't listen. He would, he'd decide who's to blame. And it's the spanking. In fact, used to. Since he worked in a paper mill, they had a lot of pulleys. On our belts from wheels to wheels and that. And when one wore out, he would cut a strip out of it and take it. That was a strap that he brought home to give us a spanking.
Wow.
And my oldest brother, now and then, when Dad was off to work and he was around, well, we called it a pita. That's in Polish. It was a strap, but in Polish it was called a pita. And he used to bury it in the garden. And my dad would always, after he found that, that we did something and he was ready for getting the pit out, he couldn't find his pit out a lot of time because my brother Ray had buried it somewhere in the garden. We had about, I would say, not even a half acre, maybe a quarter of an acre. So you had a garden in back of your house.
Okay. Yep.
And actually, my grandpa owned the house before we did, before my mother and dad purchased it from her dad. See, that was Grandpa. And he worked for the railroad, and he was a kind of a superintendent of maintenance. And so they were always, cleaning out the lines the right of way. Anytime he'd find a fruit tree, he would dig it up and bring it home, plant it in the garden. Plant it in our backyard. So we had about 5 or 6 trees.
Wow.
Apple, and we had I remember a pear tree,
Huh.
a cherry tree, and then we had a apple tree. I don't know what kind of apple it was. We used to call it Christmas apple because they never got soft till about Christmas time.
Whoa,
And
interesting.
we would wrap them in paper, and because they were too hard in September and that, wrap them in paper and individually.
Huh.
And then we'd put them away, and then about December, Christmas, we'd start, well, you can have an apple, so go pick an apple out of the bushel basket and open it up, and you had a nice soft apple.
Interesting.
And later on, when I was in the workplace, I was telling, I says, hey Ryan, when I was young, we used to have apples, we used to wrap them in paper, and he looked at me, he said, so did we.
Huh.
And he says, then when it came down in the wintertime, my parents would say, okay, we can start eating apples, but you can only eat the one with a spot on it. He says, so all winter we were eating rotten apples. And I laughed about it. I said, you know, that was that was with us. We would open these apples, and some of them, you know, because they fell off the tree or that,
Jeez.
well, they got brown and they were rotting by Christmas time. They were rotting. But I had to laugh. He says, all winter we were eating rotten apples.
Wow.
Bruce was his name. Yeah, Bruce was his name. I had to laugh at that.
Wow.
Holy gee, Bruce. That's exactly how it was with us. The other thing we had was in the basement we had what we call a potato bin.
Mm-hmm.
So in the fall we would go out to my mother's aunt's farm.
Mm.
They raised potatoes.
Mm.
We'd get our like 4 bushel of potatoes, bring them in the fall, and then downstairs in the coldest part of the basement had a kind of a bin area, and we'd put on all the potatoes were dumped in there because that was our daily dinner, was always potatoes.
Really?
Yeah, it was always potatoes.
Almost every day of the year.
Pardon me?
Almost every day of the year.
Yeah. My recollection is every day of the year. Potato was, you know, the main course, was part of the main course.
Wow.
And I remember potatoes, yeah.
Okay. So what would you have with them?
Oh, we usually had mashed potatoes. Well, every day, since we didn't have a refrigerator. So
Right.
on the way home, my dad would always stop at the grocery store and pick up fresh meat.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. And it was like hamburger or meats like that. No
Okay.
steaks, never any steaks.
Sure.
Or pork but he would always on the way home stop at the grocery store on the corner and come bring it in with that, and that was our fare for the day, is whatever he brought home. So
you might have some ground beef with your mashed potato.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, we used to eat a lot of pulley sausage.
Oh.
And that used to be our Sunday morning
Ooh.
meal, is pulley sausage. And boy, that pulley sausage,
Wow.
they used to make good pulley sausage. I can remember that.
Yeah.
Good pulley sausage.
What would you have with that? Would that be part of a recipe?
Well, we would have, we had eggs. Eggs
Okay.
were, plentiful because,
Yeah.
all the farms had.
Okay.
In fact, we had chickens one time.
Oh.
And I remember when we used to kill them. Well, my dad used to hit them over the head with a club, and then cut their heads off.
Yep.
And then leave them go, and they would run.
Yep.
And the old expression, you're running around like a chicken with a head cut off.
Yep.
And that's exactly, they'd go. And we used to watch. Then they'd get, boiling water and then dip them in the boiling water so that you could defeather them.
Oh, yeah.
That was
Wow.
And these darn feathers, they stuck, that was part of our job. My dad wouldn't do it. You kids, you do it.
Wow.
Pull the feathers. Because he would, clean them out and all that.
Okay.
And let it for Mom to. The other job we always had baked bread at home.
Okay.
And we would always have make enough loaves last for 3 or 4 days.
Okay.
And our job when we came home from school was they would make the bread dough, and then put it in the oven. Not heated, but let it rise.
Yeah.
And then it was our job when we came home from school to punch the bread down again. Then when they would come home, well, they would bake the bread, and then but we loved the bread as it was baked.
Yeah.
First out, put butter on it.
Yeah.
So it was great.
Wow.
Yeah.
How would your mom regulate the temperature in the oven? Because I imagine you couldn't regulate them like you could today.
Yeah, it's a good question. I don't see. I was too young to really pay much attention.
Yeah.
I just knew that.
Sure.
Well, I knew that one time that I was playing ball or something, and I was, geez, I gotta punch that bread.
Oh.
And I came out, and it was right against the oven top.
Yeah.
So I had to scrape it off the oven top. It had risen so high.
Wow.
So it was quite interesting.
So, staples of your diet would have been potatoes and bread and
Yeah.
some beef and
Beef
maybe some produce from the
and
garden.
eggs. Yeah.
Eggs, okay.
And produce. Well, we had, whatever we could raise in the garden, but we never had a good uh, garden. I mean,
Oh, okay.
that like the neighbor.
Yeah.
Well, the neighbor even raised potatoes,
Okay.
but I remember they used to get the potato bugs. I don't know if you knew there was potato bugs.
No.
Oh my gosh, these potato, and they were slimy.
Oh.
And they every day they were out there when it flowered, picking off
Okay.
these
Yeah.
potato bugs and destroying them.
Huh.
But they used to have a whole backyard. All their whole crop was potatoes
Yeah. Interesting.
because they were Polish. Their last name was Kelly,
Okay.
and I could never understand why they were Polish and their last name was Kelly.
Mm-hmm.
Well, it was Kelishewski. And it was actually my mother's aunt because
Oh, okay.
we would always say, "Hey, Aunt Kelly." Yeah,
Oh.
and Aunt Kelly. And of course, I remember when I was, about 13 or 14. She enjoyed beer. Most
Oh.
Polish enjoyed beer anyway.
Wow.
So all her sons and husband were away on work, and after school she would say, "Hey Lee, here's a quarter. Go get me 3 bottles of beer
Yeah.
from the store." And so I'm obedient. I don't want to disobey anybody. Okay, and she said, "Well, in case they ask you who's the beer for, just tell them it's for your mother."
Mm. Wow.
And when my dad used to make some beer
Oh, really?
down in the basement.
Okay.
Down in. He wasn't a drinker though. It's
Yeah.
surprising. He'd get sick. If he
Oh.
drank too much,
Yeah.
and so do I. I get sick
Oh.
if I have, getting a little bit too much. I get
Yeah.
sick. I'd
Interesting.
throw up and
Okay.
awful.
Yeah.
Sick in my stomach. But he could never drink but much. Never.
Okay.
Drink. On the other hand, my mother, she's like typical Polish.
What's
She-
that?
It's Polish. They enjoy beer
Okay.
now and then.
Yeah.
But he used to make it in the back and down in the basement. And of course, you always had an entrance to the basement from the outdoor.
Okay.
Although nowadays you don't.
Yeah.
But in those days,
Yeah.
for some reason, they always had a
Like the cellar entrance?
cellar entrance from
Yep.
the outdoors.
Yep.
Steps down, and I know that my aunt next door now and then she'd come over and test the liquid.
Ah.
She'd come over, she'd be going down the basement. We kind of wonder why is she going down the basement? We never asked her because it's none of our
Yeah.
business.
Yeah.
But we knew that later on that
Testing the beer.
Dad would say, "You kids been drinking my beer?"
Wow. Wow.
The other thing that Saturday night was bath night.
Okay.
That's when we had it, but once a week. Bath night was
Okay.
Saturday night, and of course we didn't have any hot water heater,
Ah.
but we had a kerosene stove down the basement, and he would heat up a tub of water.
Yep.
You fill it with water and then carry it upstairs and put it in the bathtub.
Wow.
Then the family would take our baths. And then,
Wow. Yeah.
Yeah. So, and then after bath, everybody wanted to be first so they could get to the heating
Yeah.
part.
Would you all use the same water, or would
For
you
the whole
get
family?
different?
No. That's the other thing that I had a story. When I was employed, I must have been, I don't know what age, but when I was employed with Commonwealth, I remember they had what they call a sud saver on your washing machine.
Okay.
In other words, you wouldn't destroy. If you had a batch of water,
Yeah.
you'd get it for the second load.
Wow.
So it was good for 2 loads. see?
Okay.
They had what they call a sud saver,
Huh.
and you'd save on soap that way. So I went in there. I remember, I was married now with Doris, so I went in there and I said, "Hey, and there was this Italian guy. He was a character, and I told him, I says, "Hey, I want to buy a washing machine. I'm looking for a recommendation." And then I said, "Oh, by the way, I want one with a sud saver." He looked at me and says, "Sud saver?" He says, "Oh, they don't even make those kind anymore." He says, "You mean to tell me that you used to take you would take the same bath as in your wife in your wife's water?"
Wow.
And I looked at him and I says, "Well, in fact, the whole family took the bath in the
Wow.
same water."
Yeah.
I says, "Of course, Mom was first,
Okay.
and Dad."
Okay.
Of course, it was really they had separate for them. They
Okay.
at a different time. So
Okay.
but us kids were
Okay,
five
yeah.
kids were at the
Man.
same time. Yeah. So
Would you all get in
look
together
how
or
clean
one
the
at a
thing
time?
is. Yeah.
And the water would be pretty cold by the last person.
Yeah. Oh yeah. I would think so.
Wow.
You were not allowed a lot of time. You could get in there and hurry up. And
Wow.
you didn't have like we used to. Whoever was last could play. Swish the water around and that if it was still fairly warm. So
Man.
you got used to it. In those days, you
Yeah,
got
exactly.
used to it.
You didn't
so
think much of it, I guess.
oh
Yeah.
yeah.
Then would it just drain out piping?
Yeah, we had plumbing,
Okay,
so
yeah.
we just drained it out.
Okay.
Yeah, but I can remember I was later I was thinking, gee, that we weren't exactly the cleanest kids in the neighborhood. I bet it did get kind of grubby after a few of us hit the water.
Wow. Wow. What kinds of things did you all do together as a family?
Well, we went on picnics.
Okay.
My mother was in they belonged to like the VFW, the veterans organizations, and my mother was always in the politics of it.
Okay.
She was because she could play the piano. She would play the marches and that when they would have any
Wow.
kind of doings.
Okay.
Marching in and that. And
Wow.
she played just like like in a bar room. It
Yeah.
was bang, bang, bang. you actually think the troops are coming. She played. But I enjoyed listening to her. I thought she was pretty good. And so we all kind of took piano lessons.
Mm.
So, and I told you about my finish, don't you? Where I went on stage.
Yeah.
I told you
The
that
dog.
already, so I don't have to tell you
Yep.
that anymore.
Yep.
Anyway,
That one,
so
Yep.
I always wanted to play the piano, but gee, I just didn't get the time. But my difficulty was on eighth notes.
Oh.
I could play quarter notes, but
Okay.
then when you got these
A little
eighth notes and
faster.
16th,
Oh,
gee,
yeah.
that was. And I always envy how these people with the drums could play
Yeah.
drums like they do.
Yeah.
I don't know. Did you ever play a drum?
Nope.
I could never, In fact, at one time the VFW had an instructor came in and we had little pieces of 2x4 on a frame, and that was the drum. We were supposed to learn how to drum,
Mm.
and there was an instructor, and I, of course, any things where you play real fast, I couldn't.
Mm.
I just couldn't do it.
Mm.
And there was one kid that was in the group. He couldn't even do the quarter notes.
Mm.
If you played in half notes, he could. And of course, you know what a half note
Yeah.
is in that.
Yeah.
So I mean, you could appreciate what
Yeah.
I'm talking about. How many
Yeah.
beats and that.
Right. Right.
So
Huh.
yeah. Oh my gosh.
Huh.
Yeah. Oh, like you say. Well, did we do anything? Yeah. We went on to a lot of picnics.
Okay.
Yeah, and one in particular I was telling about my mother playing in the drum and bugle corps. Well, there was in Sheboygan, which is about about 90 miles north of Alpena,
Mm.
and of course it was a big like a July 4th, And of course, she had made the picnic lunch, and so away we got in our Hudson Terraplane and
Mm.
up to Sheboygan we went, and of course she performed, and then we went to the park and said, well, it's time it's a picnic lunch.
Huh.
No picnic lunch. Then of course my mother and dad were blaming each other for, you should have put it in, you should have put it in. One of those unfortunate
Yeah.
things between husband and wife.
Yeah.
So we had no picnic lunch. So
Mm.
I remember Dad going to the store. It was on either a Saturday or Sunday, and bananas were 5 cents a pound.
Huh.
And of course, he got bananas, so our whole lunch was bananas.
Mm. Wow.
So, but it really, actually, my dad's family was really very cohesive. They
Okay.
were always together.
Okay.
And at least once a year, they would have a reunion.
Yep.
And we would all get together, and they would have a
Mm.
big bonfire. And I
Mm.
mean, big bonfire. It wasn't
Mm.
like you and I would make for maybe our kids or that.
Yeah.
They would have a big one that would be
Wow.
maybe 4 feet high.
Wow.
They would really get logs out of and they would usually be on a beach or somewhere,
Okay.
some deserted beach and that.
Yeah.
They would really, and it was a lot of fun.
Wow.
And if there was an amusement park, they would start off at the amusement park and end up on the beach singing songs and that.
Huh.
So it was, but I remember on my dad's side it was really, they really believed in it. So we had about, I had about 6 or 7 uncles,
Okay.
and so when the get-togethers were really very enjoyable.
Oh, okay.
But most of my uncles moved down from Alpena to Detroit. That's
Okay.
when, they were making automobiles more, and
Right.
so everybody was building automobiles. But my dad's and my uncle stayed in Alpena, and another of my uncles, my other uncle that was my aunt was a Stafford. Her husband worked at the cement plant, and my dad and my uncle worked at the paper plant.
Mm.
So, and my dad was in the maintenance where they made sure all the belts were tight, and also he had a lathe that was 20 feet, where he used to do on a roller. You'd have to put a crown on it. By being a crown, it had to go like a highway. Your highway was
Okay.
like that.
Yep.
To get the
Yep.
water off. Well, this crown used to, so the paper wouldn't go either way. It
Yeah.
would stay right on that rollers that they were making paper.
Right.
See, to the roller.
Right.
So his job was grinding this roller every now and then. And
Okay.
so he did it, and then he had calipers. He'd go down, and so he was real good at that. And when he retired, they had another guy that tried to do it, and they couldn't keep the paper from skidding off
Wow.
to one side or the other.
Wow.
So then they finally had to invest in an electronic one.
Okay.
So
Huh.
so I remember Dad that in his not really high class education
Yeah.
had done just by like trial and error,
Right.
just became real good. Whereas my uncle was really, he was a kind of a skilled carpenter.
Mm.
He was good at carpentry. So, and when we built our cottage up there, well, both my dad and my uncle were retired, and I drew plans for one, and they put up the frame, the rough frame for the cottage. Then I did all the work on weekends, going up north with the family and without the family sometimes.
Okay.
Did all the wiring.
Mm.
I got a guy to, on the schematic put the wiring, so then I went up and just all did all the wiring myself, all the
Mm.
plumbing. That
Wow.
was maybe I told you about
Yeah,
the
you told me a little bit
Yeah,
about
I told
that,
you about
yeah.
that, so we
Yeah.
don't have to go over that
Yeah.
again.
Your family would all go to church together, I assume, too.
Oh yeah, yeah.
How often would you go?
Oh, every week.
Every week, once a
Oh,
week,
yeah.
every Sunday morning?
Every Sunday morning,
Yeah.
yeah. We went to the Polish church,
Wow.
and they would, and they had a Polish choir. All the music was in Polish.
Wow.
And in fact, Father Gatsky would give his talk in Polish a lot of times, his homily in Polish. The other thing that as he got an older age, that he had false teeth, and so you know, because they never fit him quite so well, he was saying mass. Sometimes you'd take it out and put it on the side of the altar, and so then, and he was saying his Latin, but it was all saying bump 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 bump. And you know how a person without teeth is.
Yeah.
I could never figure out what he was.
Oh, wow.
Oh, the other one thing I did remember, they used to take a collection. They had two collections. One was for they call the seat collection. You pay 10 cents for your seat.
Oh.
Every week it put you 10 cents, and of course, my parents would give us the money in that.
Okay.
And then sometimes, well, we did they didn't have enough money for us kids. So one time I remember I had a penny, but it turned out it was an Indian head penny.
Oh.
Indian head penny. It was the 18 something. And I was just kind of saving it for the day. Well, one day I reached in my pocket without thinking, and I put that when the guy handed out, I put this penny. I looked at it. I said, "Oh my gosh, it's that penny." So and he took the penny.
Yeah.
Because I was a real young kid then. So,
Yeah.
so he accepted the penny. So. Oh, the other thing now see where we lived we used to call, there was a French, French church. The Polish church was 1.5 miles
Okay.
from home. So in the French church, I became an altar boy. So a lot of times I was help serving and that. And let's see, what story was I going to try to tell you? Oh yeah, I became an altar boy. I would help out. Let's see, but I was thinking of something. No, well, when I became an altar boy, see, it was Stafford, and we were in a French part of town.
Okay.
With a lot of French Cousineau and different French names like that. And of course, the parents were all upset because their son, this Polish kid, was serving, and their French kid was not. Not serving it. It's because that their kid was not, couldn't pick up what they were supposed to be doing, whereas I was
Right.
I was really hip on doing what you were supposed to be doing at this
Right.
time, so.
Right. Huh.
Yeah, so.
What was your dad like? What was he like as a dad? What do you remember? What was he like as a husband?
Well, I know that whatever Mom said, she was the boss of the family.
Okay.
But she was, her dad was very dynamic anyway. Like he was a superintendent on the railroad, where Dad was more of a common laborer.
Okay.
So he was used to, although he did get to be a sergeant in the World War One. He was a sergeant in the World War One. We had a picture, and he had a picture of his whole company. I don't know who's got it now, but he had the whole group when he was in the Army. In fact, he went early to the Army, then got out because he was not old enough, and then when he became old enough, he went back in. So this is the First World War. So, but Dad, he was, well, I wanted to be a better dad than he was.
Mm.
Because he was so busy always trying, trying, whatever we had to do to make things. I remember and Mom talking one time, they said, well, this year we can't pay anything on the principal. We can only pay the interest.
Wow.
And they, of course, they had a private loan on the house.
Yeah.
So some years they couldn't, and I don't know, I know they didn't pay monthly, so they had to save up for that one total payment at the end of the year for interest. So some years, I remember Dad and Mom saying, well, we can't pay that. We can't pay any of your principal, we just gotta pay the interest. So, so it wasn't easy for Mom and Dad. But that's one thing later on, if especially my younger brother would start telling about some of their faults, and I would always stop them. I says, listen, I always remember Mom and Dad as being good parents. Don't tell me anything about, of anything that will upset, like Dad did this or Mom did this, and don't ever tell me that. I don't want to know.
Yeah.
It's yours. It's up to you. You keep it. It's in your mind. But I don't want to go on in life just thinking that, they did faulty things. So
Right.
I never, and that's, I have to admit that even though my dad was, strict with us, my mother was not as strict. But Dad was strict. And so I said, no, they're our parents. Although my dad turned out, I was my dad's favorite because I was interested in sports, and so he was.
Okay.
We would talk, anytime talk about the Detroit Tigers and
Yeah.
players, whereas my other brothers never were talking sports. But me and my dad was. So,
okay.
yeah.
Huh.
So, but he was. There was some, some kind moments, and then I remember that when I got homesick picking berries one day, 15 miles from home.
Wow.
I got sick that time.
Oh man.
And he wanted to know, well, how much did I make? And I busted out crying. And so I did, because I just paid enough for the ride out and the ride back from the berry patch. So he gave me a dime.
Ha.
So,
You were there any like life lessons that you learned from him, or did you when you look at
the lesson I did learn is listen to your kids. Listen to their side. Don't jump to conclusions. So and it's very seldom I ever got down to even spanking any of the kids. Like Tom, you got to go sit at the end of the stairs.
Yeah.
And of course, there was a doorway to go to the stairs, so they'd have to sit on the bottom stair while we were, finishing dinner.
Yeah.
So.
Okay.
Oh, the other thing that of course, that was our job to do the dishes after. I remember, and and we took turns being the dishwasher and the wiper, and of course, just to get on the other, we would always save a last dish or a last fork, so they wouldn't, we'd piddle around. Well, you can't go now. You got one more thing.
Yeah.
Don't rush off. And just to get on, it's come on, get that so we can go out and play.
Yeah.
No. So that's all. That was our, how the things that get on either one of their goats. So.
Yeah. How about your mom? Any life lessons you think you've learned from her?
Well, yeah, she never hugged me.
Oh, really?
Never hugged me. I don't know if I ever told you that before.
Mm.
And that's I was just aching for her.
Wow.
See, I found out that's why I was so lonely, that mother
Wow.
never, this is, and of course later on she said, well, Lee, that was life among the Polish families. You sure you had a family, but there was no real sign of love between. Oh, you say, oh yes, I'll do this. So you ordered that, but there was no real until actually when my dad passed away. My mother didn't know how she would ever live without Dad. I remember that. So
Wow.
that's the first time I really recognized that she really loved Dad. And in fact, and she said she kind of gave up on living.
Mm.
And I told her, I said, Mom, Dad would want you to keep on. You still have a family and all that. And then, but for a couple of months after Dad passed away, it was
Wow.
it was pretty rough dealing with her. But then she decided, oh, well, yeah, she got us kids, and we were, and of course, Dal now, after Dad died, now he had retired,
Okay.
and he decided to go to Alpena, and he would kind of take care of her.
Okay.
So he was there, and then of course my brother Ray would come up all summer, so he was there at the lake. So daily he would be coming in and seeing mother and so on. So.
Okay.
And then she kept kind of active.
Mm.
She got back into politics. She was quite into politics a lot.
Oh.
Yeah, she was, and of course this Representative Davis from the UP they got kind of enjoying to have her, and he even took her to Washington.
Oh.
Yeah, for some kind of a Republican get together.
Okay.
So, yeah. So that's but I remember, in fact, I remember this one time when we were going back home and we were saying goodbye, and I was really moved by Dad. My dad. He still was being able to stand up and everything.
Okay.
Because otherwise he'd be always sitting down and laying halfway up. But I remember my mom even saying, Lee, I thought you were going to kiss him. I gave him a big hug.
Oh.
Gave him a big hug
Yeah.
because that was my sign of loving him.
Yeah.
I know that Polish people never, I don't know how he would accept a kiss, but I was that love was there between he and I. So.
Yeah.
And I even to the end, when I found out that it was near the end, and I came from Jackson, Doris stayed down, and I said, well, I don't know what the situation, but they said Dad's pretty bad. So I went up, and of course now he was in a hospital. He'd been in a rest home for about 5 months. He was in the hospital, so I went up to the hospital and went, and he was not communicating. And I took him by the hand and I said, Dad, it's Lee. And as soon as I said it was Lee, he clenched his hand real tight. And then I said, well, I'm going to go see Mom. I'm going to say hello and I'll be right back. When I came back, he was dead. Yeah, by the time I came in. So I thought that he wanted me to be there by his side one more time before he passed away. Yeah. So that was my time that I really. So I would just look back at my dad that he was. I could understand in those days how those days were living, but to me, he was my dad.
Yeah.
I loved him so.
Yeah.
In the same way with my mom, that even though she didn't hug me, well, that was I had to pay for it, I guess. So you just lived through it. So.
Yeah.
even a couple of times I told her how she had to be towards the other kids because she was always kind of saying, always, since she was so good on fashions and that, if they had something the wrong color, well, she was she was she was very outspoken on that.
Mm.
In fact, and she and Doris never hit it off.
Oh, really? No.
Because she was always telling Doris, what she would do, and of course, I just let it. I just kind of ignored it. Whenever she'd tell me, I just ignored it. But it did affect Doris.
Yeah.
It got to the. Later on, Doris, I could find out that she didn't like my mother giving her advice.
Yeah.
And I can understand that, because actually, when I look back, Doris I did a fantastic job. And anybody would say, "Well, gee, you need a lot of credit for bringing up your kids like they are." And I said, "No, it was Mother, because she was with them during the formative days.
Yeah.
How they were going to be when they grew up depended a lot on her, how she did." So,
Sure.
yeah. By the way, funny story. Things when we started having a lot of kids. Well, she had learned how to cope with not having the new shirts, shoes, and everything. I remember when in the springs, a lot of wet and of course their galoshes had holes in them. And I wasn't paying attention because it was kind of up to her she decided it was time to get something. But anyway, what she would do is save bread wrappers. And I remember if they had a hole in their boot, galoshes, well, she'd put their feet in a bread wrapper and then put the
Wow.
and they would go to school that way. So you must see. I think you think, geez, what a way to raise a kid, but
Cheaper than new shoes.
yeah. And there's many times I would want to take the child to emergency. She said, no. We'll put a bandage on it, or even the favorite was a butterfly. You're a butterfly bandage.
Yeah.
And so on. So.
Hmm.
And of course, one of the things is, this was of course later on when Joe, his hockey coach, told him that you could be more, you could have more agility if you don't wear socks with your skates, hockey skates.
Wow. Okay.
So he would wear no socks in his skates. Well, but he enjoyed skating so much, so he and this group of kids went out to Clark Lake, and of course the temperatures were down pretty low.
Yeah.
I'd say in the teens. But he was enjoying skating so much. He was skating around and of course his feet got numb and then by the time he came home from skating, it was shown in his some of his toes were black already.
Ooh.
And we thought, oh my gosh. So we rushed him over to the ER room, and so the doctors finally said that his body health was so good that he was able to recover without cutting off any toes. So but I remember looking at his toe, and a couple of them were black.
Ooh.
That's the gangrene had already been setting in.
Wow.
That's how bad it was.
That's scary.
Yeah. But he came through, and now he's still. I think a couple of times I asked him, well, you still skate without socks? And he said, yeah, I skate without socks. Well, you're old enough to know better, so it's up to you now.
Huh.
So I guess he's got that pond behind him. They, you know,
Mhm.
as soon as it freezes up, they're out there skating, and
Yeah.
people over to skate.
The Winter Classic.
Yeah, and in fact, everyone did. There would be always one day where he invited the whole family to come to
Yep.
there and come skate.
Mhm.
Yeah, perhaps you would probably.
I haven't been there yet, but I know Sam
Oh.
has.
Oh,
Sam skated there a number of times.
oh, okay, yeah.
Yeah.
Sam likes hockey.
Yeah.
Yeah, you were not a hockey man.
Yeah, I never ice skated hockey,
Oh,
but I always enjoyed watching the games.
oh, I see.
We played driveway hockey
Oh
growing
yeah,
up.
oh yeah.
Yeah.
That was always fun. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Mhm. When you were growing up, maybe after you got past the fourth grade and switched schools, what were you thinking, or what were you wanting to do after school? Did you think about the future much in that
no,
way?
never thought of the future.
Really?
Oh yes, it was. See, now high school was gonna come, and of course I could go to the parochial school,
Mhm.
or I could go to the industrial. I mean the public school.
Okay.
Well, all the parochial schools, the two that were in town, they were just like college preparatory or stenographic or that kind of
Mhm.
typing and that
Mhm.
sort of thing. Whereas I said, well, gee, I'm not going to go. I'm going to go to a college. My parents can't afford it. I don't have enough money to pay my own way. So I decided, well, I'm just going to reside in Alpena. So when so I better go to the public high school, learn how to be a mechanic or a carpenter or a electrician.
Yeah.
Or, take wood shop
Right.
and that. Of course, their wood shop and those there were just not very high class in those days anyway.
Okay.
So, but I wanted to go to get more in the industrial side.
Yeah.
So then I switched to the public school.
Okay.
So, and got in what they would call the industrial course. I know it was, but then the war was coming.
Yeah.
So that now the teachers were gone. So the high school, even in the public school, were not good, excellent teachers, because a lot of them were teaching, in different. Were taking on two subjects into one. It would have to be their good subject and not so good.
Yeah.
And so I didn't get a good industrial
Okay.
background. I remember it came to the point where they were they used to have even welding, and there was only two of us in the welding class. I forget the name of the class, but you could do a certain metal forming and all that stuff. Well, me and Willard were because he had done some welding, and he convinced the instructor that he could show me how to do welding with a acetylene torch and that. So
Wow.
so I would say, okay, Willard, I'll be with you
Wow.
because I want to know how to do the welding and that. So we kind of learned how to weld with acetylene and I remember then we got one day he said, well, I see we got a cutting torch. We're going to do a little cutting. So he was fiddling around with the controls and that, and he's getting it all set, and I'm looking at it, and the darn red started crawling up the gun,
Oh, yeah.
And I said, Willard, run for your life. And he just looked at me and then turned the knob down, shut off the oxygen. That's what all you got to do is shut off the oxygen. But me, I was ready to run for the door. I didn't want to be around that. When something blow up or that. So I remember that experience.
Mm.
But I was, we had auto mechanics, and the guy didn't know that. I knew probably as much about motors as he did, the instructor. You know, he had a textbook, but he was learning, you know, he just was looking at, and he was learning while we were learning, so I didn't learn very much. So actually, I was so interested in all these, so I was any of the, oh yeah, and that's where in the woodworking class, the final exam is what do you plan on doing in what would you like to do on your future? And so, you know, I was thinking, well, I'd like to build my own house. And he said, well, okay, our final exam is just what do you want to do in woodworking for the future? So I wrote a couple of pages on building a house, and I learned some things because we had made a model house. We actually cut the pieces to, you know, like 16:1, you know, instead of a 16, like was 16 feet would be like 1 foot or something like that. And we had the framework and all that, and I designed this house and put it all together. It took me 1 semester.
Wow.
And so anyway, I wrote it, and then one day I remember this guy coming, he says, Lee, I want to tell you, that is the best written exam I ever read about what you would like to do in your future. So if you're asking did I have any thoughts on the future? Yes. I had one thing, is to build my own house. And that after that woodworking.
Wow.
And of course the same thing with the electrical part. I want to do the electrical.
Okay.
Do it on my own. So
yeah.
I might say that I had at least those things I had in mind. Nothing about plumbing though.
Okay.
Because,
yeah. Did you end up teaching my dad any of the electrical stuff? Because now that I think about it, I mean, he knows a thing or two about electrical. Did he get any of that from you? Or?
I think I wasn't there for the teaching, but I think they were noticing what I was doing.
Yeah.
See?
Yeah.
I think that was
so he
more
picked up on it a little bit from you?
Yeah, I think because even when after you know they were gone, well I got one of these radio saws. I never had one before, but now I said, oh well, I can afford it now, so I got a radio saw, and I got the bench saw. I got into the thing. I was with the thing that the saw is on top, not in through the table.
Yep.
So I preferred that one, and I was now trying to do stuff I'm reading, and of course I got a number of textbooks from that I bought at one of the Lowe's or whatever it was.
Yeah.
To how to do the plumbing and that, so I wanted to always do it myself. So. And that's even the plumbing I did at the cottage. We did it down here of all
things.
I
already talked about that.
I told you about that, so you knew that. So.
Did you have any like role models or mentors that you looked up to when you were growing up? Who in your life did you really kind of idolize or want to be like?
Well, of course, baseball.
Okay.
Yeah, those kind of models. Because I remember that. For example, I like to play ball, and I remembered that of all us 5 boys, I was the one that on the garage door I would put a strike zone. Then I'd get to the end of the driveway and try to hit that. And I by just going that continuous my accuracy was pretty good. I was really amazed at the accuracy. So whenever we had any ball games, I would always be the pitcher because I could I could
Mm.
pitch always strikes. There were always strikes. So I'd be all-time pitcher for both sides. Whenever we play in the backyard
Wow.
with that, it was always the pitcher.
Okay.
So, and I would say, yeah, my role models were, I wanted to be like my Uncle Ben, though. He was a carpenter, and I wanted to, my dad was, cut once and then sledge it into place. You know, my dad wouldn't check his measurements.
Okay.
And how many times have I screwed up myself? Always measure twice, cut once.
Yeah. Right.
But my Uncle Ben was a kind of role model.
Okay.
Because whenever I talked to him, he was almost, I was almost like a son to him, the way he would talk to me. And then I found out from his son, he says, Lee, you were my dad's favorite for, in the relatives of the relative. You were my dad's favorite.
Why do you think that was?
Well, I think a number of reasons, because my uncle used to play ball too, and I would always, when Dad and he played, they played on the Fletcher Paper Company team. I would always go to the games, and I would be there. I remember I was the mascot for the Fletcher team, and I thought my Uncle Ben was. My dad was a good catcher. My dad was the catcher, but my Uncle Ben was a good all-around player.
Okay.
He was good wherever he played,
Okay.
and he was humble. I mean, he was always quiet. And when the kids were whenever they visited us, of course, in Alpena, we were at the lake, he would always bring something for the kids. And I thought, boy, whenever I have grandkids, I want to remember, bring something for the grandkids. So he was, you might say, of all the people, he was really a role model.
Okay.
And his wife Yvonne was nice lady too. So, but yeah, I would say Uncle Ben was my role model. Some of the other guys, well, some of my uncles on my mother's side, I liked them, but I thought sometimes they were thinking was screwed up. In fact, I had a couple of uncles on my mother's side. Well, no, they were on my mother's side, but they were husbands to my mother's half sisters.
Okay.
And they were always trying to, screw up the works. Like they even one time they were plotting how they would drive one behind the other. This Kettle Hut, I thought he must have been out of Kentucky or somewhere. And he would say, okay, what we'll do is and I overheard him saying, we will come to that traffic light, and then I will bump into you, and you feign, neck pain, and then we'll sue and we'll get money. So I've overheard them plotting, one time when there was a kind of a reunion on their side of the family. Jeez.
Wow.
But those two uncles, one was a nut, kind of a crazy. The other one was this. He was always, he looked like he was mad at everybody, like everybody was. Oh, and I don't know if I told you about one uncle on my dad's side, Spunny. His name was Norbert. Did I tell you about him?
I don't know. That's not ringing a bell.
Well, I'll tell you about him.
Yeah.
He was working down in Detroit, and of course, he was on a night shift.
Okay.
And he was always having trouble of, sleeping on the job. So he used to take these no-nods. They a little pill they call no-nods, and he'd take some of them. And
Okay.
I remember him telling the story one time. He says, You know, I took a whole pack of these no-nods, and I still drove home on the sidewalk. But he was kind of a goofy
Yikes.
uncle anyway. So I
Okay.
had goofy uncles that
Yeah.
I had all kind of uncles.
Yeah.
But like I said, Uncle Ben was my favorite.
Mm.
So,
Mm. Mm.
yeah.
What were some of the um, most memorable memories you think you made with your kids as they grew up?
Well, the one that I loved the most is, uh, first of all, is playing ball in the backyard.
Yeah.
Oh, I just loved getting that because
Yeah.
it took me away from my work
Mm.
and because I used to worry about my work a lot,
Mm.
but I used to just want to play with the kids and get
Mm.
them, and I have to admit that that playing around in the backyard, they all became, very athletic
Mm.
and liking to
Yeah.
play sports, to hike
True.
and walk and that.
Mm.
So that was, I always
Mm.
loved that.
Yeah.
And I think I told you about this neighbor that his dad was asking him what he would like to do,
Mm.
and he said, I would like to go over and play with the Staffords every night. Because we were always,
Yeah.
baseball in the backyard.
Yeah.
So
Uh, uh. What were some of your favorite trips that you went on with Granny?
oh, every Western trip.
Yeah.
Every Western
Where did you
trip.
all go?
Yeah, we started off, our first one was the Badlands and then the Mount Rushmore.
Yeah.
And of course, at that time, they were giving out, if you were retired, and I don't know if you had to be a veteran, but you retired, you could get a free pass to all the national parks.
Wow.
And I just happened to hit the right age, because I was just
Wow.
62 or whatever it was,
Yeah.
that you could get this free pass. So I got a free pass. And it's somewheres, now I don't know where it is, but
Wow.
I got, and so we decided to visit all the national parks that we could.
Wow.
We did. So there was, just visiting all these national parks was,
Yeah.
and the thing is that Doris was all for it too.
Okay.
She was interested, yeah, let's go.
Yeah.
And that's where she really liked hiking, hiking.
Right.
And the only difference between, I would pace myself, where she liked to,
Mm.
she'd always scoot off, like it's a race.
Mm-hmm.
But then she would be always dog tired after the third mile or something. So,
That's
where I
funny.
would be more of a pace setter, and she was more of a let's go.
Okay.
And,
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
but I liked all the parks we did, and of course, like one of the better ones was where we were on a houseboat
Mm.
on Lake Mead down
Mm.
in Arizona.
Wow.
Doing right there for
Hoover. Dam.
above Hoover Dam
Yeah.
and the Colorado River
Mm-hmm.
on a houseboat for
Wow.
5 days.
Wow.
This was where they had this this kind of retirement group. They had always 5-day things because Saturday and Sunday would be like you'd have to compete with the public,
Mm-hmm.
but then Monday through Friday is that you wherever you went, you almost had it
Mm.
very much yourself, except for people that are on vacation.
Mm-hmm.
So we went on a number of those things.
Mm.
And that one, that the houseboat was really where the guy who ran the houseboat, we signed up for, went out, and of course he was the chef and
Huh.
told us about the Colorado River when we went up the river from Lake Mead.
Yeah.
And so it was was quite interesting.
Huh.
And we would, you know, have to help out. Like there would be 8 of us on a houseboat, and the reason I liked that one so much is we went on the houseboat on Sunday, and we're sitting there, and suddenly 2 people came in I hadn't seen for 20 years at Commonwealth. This was 20 years after, you know, after I was, not after I was at Commonwealth, but
Yeah.
20 years previously at Commonwealth. I met this guy for 1 year.
Yeah.
They were out from the east, and then we made friends, both of us. He made friends with me, and she made friends with Doris, and so it was
Okay.
like, you know, part of the family. So we enjoyed, the 4 of us really
Yeah.
enjoyed it.
Wow,
So,
neat.
you know, what we did is go around Lake Mead, and then also because the silt was getting so high, it was indeterminate whether we could go up the Colorado River, and so he had to put his outboard motors up somewhat, but still propelling us to go through the shallow parts. We made it through. He said, "We don't know if we can make it. If we don't make it, well, you're just going to have to be satisfied." But we made it up. We went, about 30 miles up the river, in the Colorado River.
Yeah.
It was all, and you know, you could see all these caverns. I mean, the high walls, and that. We went up in this.
Wow.
So it was quite a thing.
Yeah.
And then the thing is, the following week, we got in kayaks. Sea kayaks. In other words, not the ones you sit into the hull, but actually you sit on top of plastic. There were 2-passenger
Okay.
kayaks. They call them sea kayaks.
Okay.
And we went down the Cala River below the dam for about 30 miles, 34. No, it had to be about 60 miles because it took us 3 days. We were going 3 days.
Wow.
We would camp. We'd find a sandbar and camp there. You know, and they would have, they would provide the tents and
Okay,
everything.
they had it all set up for you.
Yeah, so it was,
Nice.
and I remember that time, and that kayak was, as we went down the Colorado River, and in that Chloride, Arizona.
Ah.
So if you ever look at
Never heard
Arizona,
of it,
look
okay.
at Chloride, you see, it was, and then, and then this is the other thing I had locked up. That really, I gotta, come on now. I gotta find it. I just put it in one of these.
Oh.
It's a picture of the Hoover Dam, and then I got it noted where we. Oh, come on, Dick, find it. I know it had to be on the end here somewhere. Oh, anyway, I'll tell you. It was a picture of Hoover Dam, and it has the new bridge that it put
Oh,
across.
right.
But then it also showed I could I had a picture where, oh, it might be in memories. Yeah. There's the Hoover Dam, and then here is where, oh, we gotta be, just below it, right here
Oh, wow.
is where we put on our kayaks.
Okay.
It was below the you know,
Yeah.
and actually the wind was so fierce that if you didn't paddle down, you went upstream. That's how windy.
Whoa.
That was so windy,
Wow.
so windy that the wind was blowing.
Yeah.
And if you didn't paddle, and that, you know, like we used to go on the ensemble, we just let the current take us down.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's where.
Wow.
I just got this.
That's pretty cool.
I just got that.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, neat.
Yeah.
Okay.
I went to the St. Vincent de Paul.
Yeah,
utility
good
meets
idea.
up. So I said, I'll go there.
Yeah.
I know, and I saw this, and I said, oh, I'll start putting some pictures in there. Just
Yeah.
if my kids want it, okay, they can
Yeah.
have it.
Yeah.
But now you know, just like me, it gives me a chance to look
Yeah.
back.
Yeah,
And I
it's
saw
fun.
that, I just remembered it.
Yeah,
and
that's cool.
I remember when we went down there, I looked up at the dam and I said, holy jeez.
Wow.
I said, if there, and I couldn't see the current going that, because the wind was blowing. I said, what if the current takes us to the discharge?
Yeah.
Things. I said, oh my gosh. I soon found out, you know, you better paddle, boy. You want to get down.
Wow.
And we were always the last place because my chair broke.
Oh.
You know, and when you paddle, you know, you brace against the back,
Okay.
and by golly, my chair broke.
Oh.
And so there was the straps off, and so now I had the best way I could paddle was laying down on my back. And, you know, you can't do it much.
Yeah.
Because you got to get that force.
Yeah.
You got to pull back a bit. So
Yeah.
we were always up to 50 yards behind
Yeah.
the last. You know, I thought a lot of these people would not be very good at paddling, but
Yeah.
my gosh, we were the lousiest ones. So I said, when we make our first stop, we're gonna let's go to a different kayak.
Right.
We'll trade off. We will share it with.
Right. Right.
So
Yeah.
we did. But yeah, we would camp on a sidebar,
Huh.
sandbar. I mean,
Remember, yeah.
yeah, for the night.
Wow.
And
Wow.
the tents were already, you know, they put them up.
Mm.
They put them all up, so you
Mm.
tents were too. So it was.
Mm.
I would say that was. Well, it was. That was really. I still put it the first because it was, you know, we were right with people in that.
Okay.
And the other thing is when we took the trip above the Arctic Circle was the
Okay.
second best one that were on that ship.
Wow. Yeah. Yeah.
That was number 2.
That's pretty
I'd say.
cool.
So that was.
Huh.
But all the trip even to Australia, the trip to New Zealand,
Mm.
they're phenomenal. And all every time we went to a national park,
Yeah.
it was fantastic.
Oh, that's neat.
Yeah,
Those are great memories.
yeah.
It's about 11:15, I think, so we can,
Okay,
we can
yeah.
hit pause and
Yeah, I want to take
you can get ready.
Oh, by the way, I wanted to look at my